Welcome, everybody, to the Too High Podcast. It is midnight, and we are recording this after the national championship. Luckily for Diante, it is not midnight. It's just 9 o'clock for Diante. Right. I'm already half asleep, but Diante is wide awake.
Yep, I have enough time to waste another few hours before I get tired.
This is the thing. Like I think that I'm a East Coast time guy. I've been here my whole life. Mm-hmm. But the more I live in the world of a full-time sports journalist, the more I'm like, West Coast time, that's not really that bad, man.
You could do a lot worse, bro. NFL starts at 10 o'clock and it's done by 8 p.m. Like,
I don't mind it. All right, so on this episode, because the national championship just ended, Georgia is the national champion. We're going to talk about that for a bit, and then before the national championship game, we recorded some stuff on the NFL and the coaching carousel that went on Monday morning, Monday afternoon. So you can get to that after, but right now, because it just happened, Georgia is a national champion. Diante, this is good for college football, correct?
This is good for college football, honestly, in a very roundabout way, right? Like, let me not make sure I frame this properly. The fact that Georgia and Alabama played each other in a national championship game is probably not.
Yeah, that's not good.
Okay, you could say that. Georgia winning this football game was the best outcome for the sport, in my opinion. I think that it's nice. It's nice to have a new king of the sport coming from the SEC, right? If we have to submit to the fact that these guys clearly have the best players, which they do. I'm glad that it's just something other than the scripted A on the side of the helmet that gets to win a title.
Yeah, you know what? I'm the pettiest sports fan of all time, and I've had to deal with Alabama not even being in the same conference, but being in the same division as my favorite sports team, winning all these championships, and they even beat my favorite sports team in a national championship one year, which I
sure did.
Can have a hard time getting out of my head 10 years later. But it's kind of like okay, yes, Alabama is great, whatever. Normally, I would not want Georgia to win championships, but I've kind of like made this decision in my head to cope, where I'm like, you know what? The SEC West and the SEC East are kind of two different conferences. So
in a lot of you sound like such an SEC homer right now, so I can't really agree with you, but it's true. It's true.
All right, let's talk about the game. Georgia comes out in the second half and moves the ball pretty well. Mm-hmm. Something we know they did not do in the first game, and they did not do in the first half of this game. Anything that you saw that really gave them the opportunity to move the football?
Well, we kind of talked about it in the spaces, right? We were trying to figure out how in the world Georgia was going to manufacture some offense. And one of my first things I said was that they're going to have to find a way to create offense in the backfield. Like, it had to happen if they were going to find any space in the passing game based on the way that Alabama was playing them. And that's what we saw, right, on that long run by James Cook on what they were running buck sweep at the pin and pull scheme, just like we were talking about in the spaces. Cook puts his foot in the ground, cuts it back, gets a 67-yard run out of that. That kind of kicked it off. And then you saw they found the mismatch to attack. And that was number 6, a corner from Alabama. I'm sorry that I'm blanking on the young man's name. I'm sure I'll think of it as we go on. But they were able to attack in that way, and that opened up new opportunities to finally get vertical, right? You got the one-on-one that you wanted, and you were able to go after that. You get a PI, and then you get the big touchdown throw after that. And that was a game, and obviously it was put away by that interception return for a touchdown in the fourth. But it started with downhill runs. You saw on the 3-for-3 drive that Stetson Bennett had where they really kind of went ahead, it was all off of play action throws, right? Whether it was under center or shotgun, deep pocket, play action, climb, let it go down the field, and they were able to get those shots. And that's honestly, I think that was actually probably their game plan for the entire game. You saw some of the gadget plays, some of the throws that they wanted, that they just didn't have enough time to get down the field. That was clearly the game plan the whole way. They had a belief that if they just kept leaning on them and created just a couple of explosive runs, they'd have the space on the outside they needed in the play action game, and that's kind of how the second half turned out.
And both counter plays that they ran, the Cook one, and then they had another one, the other running back. I don't think it was White, but I think the other guy.
It was either White or McIntosh. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it was McIntosh. I don't know. I'm not really sure at this point. But the same thing happened, and they hadn't run this at all in the first half. In fact, we don't have. We already have some of the data up. I see 0 counter runs for Alabama, for Georgia in the first half, and I see 4 in the second half. And 2 of those, off the top of my head, were really big plays, right?
Yeah.
The Cook one, and then the other one was just the same thing. They hit it perfectly front side. They kicked everybody out. They kicked the kick out player got kicked out. The pull to lead player kicked his guy out, down the field a bit. And then there was a backside safety in space that the running back made miss one-on-one on both plays.
And you're out the gate.
And one went for 60 and one went for a lot less, but still it was the same concept. And that changed the game. And then, look, at the end of the day, like, sometimes your receivers got to go make plays.
Yep.
And you got a one-on-one. He took the one-on-one. Like you said, he made some moves in the pocket to get the ball to Mitchell on the one-on-one. But Mitchell made a tremendous play for the game-winning touchdown, basically. And like that, we were waiting for somebody to step up on the receiving core. I mean, Bowers did score a touchdown. Pickens did have that diving catch on the post in the first half, but no one else could make a play. Right. Now, I will say a lot of that has to do with Bennett not maybe putting these guys in a position to make a play at all times, but he finally did. And Mitchell makes the play of the season, play of the last generation for Georgia, basically.
Yeah.
And they get the ball in the end zone. And that was going to be how they're going to do it. They were going to some sort of explosive play, and it happened on the 2 counter runs, and then it was going to be a one-on-one ball. It was just there was no other way they were going to create offense down the field, and it happened.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't going to be from any kind of like drop back, actually full field progression type thing. That wasn't it. I mean, the whole game. I mean, that I kind of tweeted out that the analysis for this game is pretty easy because the game played out basically the way I think everybody expected, which is that there was really only one player on the field that could win or lose the game for either team.
Yeah,
and it was Georgia's quarterback, Stetson Bennett, and he happened to make the plays late in the third and early in the fourth that they needed in order to pull the game out and win. From a design perspective, one of the plays I really, really liked after getting downhill, you get that 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, and they run the little slide RPO that they get to Brock Bowers for the touchdown. That was a really good look. I really
ran it against Michigan.
Yeah, it's a good play. I mean, Bama tried it in a goal line situation and got knocked down by Lewis Seen, a guy who had a really good game today.
Yeah, he did.
All the guys, I mean, basically everybody outside of Darnell Washington, it feels like, that we mentioned showed up in a big way or had a big influence on the outcome of this game. Brock Bowers obviously was not as explosive as he had looked at different points in the season, and definitely not as explosive as he looked against Alabama in the SEC title game. But I think that the amount of attention that he drew guaranteed the one-on-ones on the outside that they got, that they were able to take advantage of ultimately. But really, man, like, for all the conversation that we're having about Bennett and them, I'm sure that we'll swing to the other side of the ball. Like, this is about Georgia's front four, man. This game was 100% about Nakobe Dean, Channing Tindall, and the defensive linemen of the Georgia Bulldogs getting after Bryce Young and winning this football game for them. They're not in position to do any of what they did in the second half without the pressure. What did you take away from Bryce Young's game on the whole?
Yeah, I think this is on the front seven and Kirby and Dan Lanning. Mm-hmm. They came with a lot of the same thing. I tweeted it out where they would come with. We talked about it at halftime. They're attacking between the B gaps because they don't believe in the Alabama's ability to pass it off, and I don't think they believe in the Alabama running backs to pick up people in protection and be solid in protection, because that's what they were getting is a lot of, hey, we're going to isolate your tackles and get them wide, and it's fine. Like we don't have to win those because, and we know we're not gonna like. Yes, we have great edge players, but yeah, they have Evan Neal, so it's fine. Like not the end of the world. But we isolate them and create this void inside of them. We slant the nose and the tackle away, and we bring both linebackers coming through that now open B gap, and one of them is going to get picked up by the back, and one of them is going to be free on the quarterback. And if the Alabama interior three offensive linemen don't sort it out, and honestly, they did not sort it out,
Right.
and that got to Bryce a lot, and that was a pretty big difference, man. Like they couldn't get to him. I'm just gonna look up the stats here. So we have 29 pressures. Actually, it was about the same here. So 5.4 yards per attempt in the championship game, and 5.6 yards per attempt under pressure from Bryce Young in the SEC championship game.
Mm-hmm.
Big difference. 4 sacks.
Yep.
To 0. That's the game right there, man.
When you're talking about the difference between 0 sacks and getting a handful, that is the game.
That's the game. That's what we said was going to happen.
The quick pressure was up. I mean, they got a lot of pressure early, so that helped as well. They were really one of the things that I did notice is that it seemed like there was a concerted effort to try to keep Bryce from rolling right, where he would obviously be a little bit more comfortable resetting his feet. I thought they did a really good job of controlling the pocket. And like you said, I mean, eating up those gaps on the interior and giving them to Kobe Dean, giving a guy like Carter, giving a guy like Tyndall the opportunity to loop around late as Bryce is trying to work his eyes down the field and find the next option in the progression. They were able to get a lot of contact and really affect his platform that way. It was a really impressive game plan. And I think that speaks to the confidence that they had, because one of the things that they maintained in preparation for this game, right, was that they felt good about what they did the week prior, or the game prior. And they felt like if they didn't blow the coverages, right, and they were actually able to get hands on Bryce Young, that they had a good shot to win this game, and that's exactly how it turned out.
Yeah, to me that was really the difference. And you saw how good I think you saw how good Bryce Young is going to be in the future. I think he still has some things to clean up, but like the guy is super accurate, and I do think he is the type of player that is like, I don't want to use the word transcendent, but like most players like don't have consistent ability outside the pocket.
Right.
I think he might be that type of player. I mean, look, he's a 5-star player. He won a Heisman in his first year starting, so like it's very possible. You don't want to go that far because that's like Russell Wilson, that's Mahomes or whatever. And I'm not saying he's there yet, but he still impressed me. I think that like Alabama, I don't know. It's like we've said this before, but like now that they've lost this game, they're not national champions. Like, where do you put this team on like the pantheon of the Saban Bama teams?
Honestly, like this one kind of falls in the pretty regular Bama team category.
Don't see it with them.
That
with this team.
They just so happened to win the SEC title game, which got them into the playoff, right, or solidified them as a 1 seed and got them a nice matchup. Like, I don't want to be hyperbolic right on the heels of the game.
Yeah.
But I'm repeating something that I've said prior. So I don't want people to think that this is me being a revisionist here. I felt coming into the playoff that if Alabama played Michigan in the semifinal game, they could lose to Michigan. And I still feel that way. And I think that what we saw in this game is the same thing we saw against Cincinnati, which is the same thing we saw against Auburn, LSU, and Texas A&M. And that's this offense does not have the fifth gear, and it's because they weren't good enough up front. That's really it. They're not good enough to maul teams in the running game, and they clearly weren't good enough to protect Bryce Young. And there was probably too much on the guy's shoulders the whole year. And because he's so phenomenal as a talent at this age, he was able to be a Heisman Trophy winner. It's a credit to him. But the dam was probably always going to break if you could get home. If Cincinnati had the offensive firepower, Alabama's not playing in this national title game, guys. Yeah. Like, that's just what it is, and it doesn't take anything away from the accomplishments, and it's an impressive year in its own right. But yeah, I feel the exact same way that I felt the entire way through, which is that when you look back at the teams that Alabama's had that's played in BCS title games or in the playoff, this one's not going to rank all that high in my opinion.
No, to me, it's really the like you said, the offensive line, and then obviously, look, I should probably say something about it. They did lose their top two receivers, right?
Yes, 100%.
You know, Mechie not playing in the game, and then Jameson Williams. Hopefully, he's. I mean, it's bad. You know it's bad by the what happened on the field. You hope it's not as bad as we all think, but probably an ACL.
Yep.
Losing those two guys, obviously very important.
I will say this is complete reckless speculating, but I did hear on a hot mic while Kirby Smart was talking to Nick Saban that he mentioned ACL when Smart asked about Williams' knee. So they said he said that's what the training staff thinks. I mean, he was grabbing on the exterior of his knee, like on the outside half of his knee. Like, again, you don't want to play doctor from home, but I know what that looks like. I know what that is. Guy plants, grabs on the outside of his knee, can't put any weight on it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only so many bad things that can happen in the knee. So, you know.
and you know, having him or Mechie in the game, they could have just made some plays, right? Like, there's always a chance. But the other thing I'll say is that Georgia stopped busting in the second half in the secondary. Like, you didn't see wide open receivers, especially down the middle of the field, man.
Yeah.
Which kept happening to them. And that played a difference. Like, all of a sudden, Alabama just couldn't move the ball as much in the second half. I do think, and this is a testament to Georgia's defense a bit, I do think, like, the game had a chance to be blown out early by Bama if they don't settle for field goals. And they were in good scoring positions early that, you know, they end up with 9 points on 3 field goals. Mm-hmm. A couple of them, you thought that they were going to score touchdowns on those drives.
Yes.
And if they do, the game's over.
Not only that blocked field goal, even though Georgia doesn't get anything big out of the offensive drive to follow it, if I remember right, that blocked field goal, keeping yourself in reach of that game instead of chasing more than one possession, ended up being a huge deal for Georgia. Yeah. That they really, really needed that. So, you know, the story, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, I think that situation, if I'm not mistaken, was Bryce Young throwing the pick at like their own 40. Mm-hmm. Georgia not doing anything with it.
Yes.
Punting it back to them, getting it down at the 2, and then Bama drove all the way and then got it blocked. And so, like, that was the game. That was the
matter of fact. Yes, we were all talking to each other like, "Oh, that was it. This is it." I can see they're starting to suck all the air out of the stadium. They were running. That was one of the few drives where Bama was running the ball okay. Feel like they were converting every third down. I was like, okay, I've seen this story before. This is where the dam breaks and everybody starts pointing fingers at each other. And they were able to stand tall. They got that stop, like you said. You block the field goal, and then that makes a big difference. Then you get those interceptions, man, and those interceptions were huge. Huge.
Yeah. It just felt like Bryce Young just threw up a couple balls.
Yes. But that's what we were talking about with why pass rush is so important and not blowing coverage in the middle of the field is so important, right? Because where do those picks happen? Outside the numbers and late in the down. You take away the easy throws for Bryce, you start crushing the pocket, make him step up and throw without his feet. Outside the numbers, the ball's going to float, and that's how you get your hands on it. That's how you affect the plays, and that's what they were able to do to get themselves off the field, man. Like Lewis Seen, Nakobe Dean, we talk about Channing Tindall, Jalen Carter, all these guys in the front and playing in the middle of the field, basically. They're the ones who won this game, and that's what puts you in a position to where Ringo can get a pick up the sideline and then take it back to the house, and that seals the game.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's obviously, we said it all along, and I think that's kind of what happened, is that they were able to get him to the ground.
Yeah.
And or get him to throw the ball. He's like good when he gets outside the pocket. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes. Like, if you can't get him down outside the pocket, he's either going to throw the ball away, or he threw a nice one to Latu on the run. He threw the touchdown that brought them back in the game. I think they took the lead at that point with a touchdown when he moved out of the pocket and found the receiver right on the goal line. He's really good outside of the pocket. He makes moves, gets outside the pocket. But if you can get him in the pocket moving his feet, because his feet need to be fixed, that's freaking truth, in my opinion. Then you can get him in a weird base, and then he can start sailing stuff, and that's what you saw, I think, on both interceptions. So, yeah, I think there's still excited for that kid, Bryce Young, but I think there's still a lot to be fixed with this game. Where do you put Georgia? This Georgia team on, like, let's say the last, just off the top of your head, you have to look them up, but like the last 10, or the playoff national champions.
Oh, that's tough. That's tough.
I'll
As a whole, I mean, we're still talking about a team that's quarterbacked by Stetson Bennett. So, there is kind of a ceiling there. But what I will say is I think they're right in that same neighborhood that 2019 Clemson team is, especially when you compare defense to defense. Obviously what Clemson had was Justin Ross, T. Higgins, and Trevor Lawrence, and Travis Etienne. So we're talking about something a little bit different in terms of an accumulation of talent, especially on the offensive end and at the quarterback position specifically. But that's the team that I think about, wherever we slot that Clemson team in the playoff era, this Georgia team needs to be right next to it. Our friend Richard Johnson kind of mentioned that he thought that this defense will be mentioned in the same light as the 2019 LSU offense. I'm talking about the 2018 Clemson national title team. This Georgia team is obviously not as good as that LSU team. That LSU team might be the best national champion since 04 USC or 2001 Miami, if not just the best national championship team ever. But they are right in that mix. So I will certainly put them ahead of a lot of the Bama teams that have won them. They're up there. This defense was special, and this defense weathered the storm for legitimately 45 consecutive minutes when their offense couldn't get their shit together before they were able to break this game open. So there's a lot of national championship defenses that could not have done what this defense did tonight.
Yeah, I think there is you're talking about, there is a reverse 2019 LSU, because as much as we both love that defense that Dave Aranda put on the field for LSU during his tenure there, the 2019 defense was kind of just okay in a lot of spaces, whereas the Georgia offense this year is kind of just okay in a lot of times, and the defense just carried this team throughout the whole season.
Yes,
and obviously we saw the issues that Bama caused them, and again, if Mechie and Jameson are playing, maybe they bust more because good players make you bust.
Right.
I gotta stop. The way I keep saying bust like that is weird. I know, but I'm gonna keep saying it like that. I'm in a mood tonight, as you know. So
it's midnight on the East Coast, guys.
So that, there's always the possibility that those two players, they get you anxious, they get you on your toes, right? And you, when you're trying to sort out different bunch sets and you're trying to sort out distribution of routes, you might be the Georgia defense, but as we see, you get attracted to numbers. Number 1, number 8, you get attracted to people like that. So maybe that not just maybe, we know that played a big part in it, but I think that once they settled in Georgia, you just weren't going to move the ball that much on them.
Yeah, dude. Brian Robinson was fighting for his life. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think it's crazy because he ran the ball 22 times for 68 yards, but I feel like that's some of the best 68 yards that you'll see a running back get. There was a lot of fight. There was a lot of fight, especially in that second half, man. He was throwing bodies off of him to get to that 3-yard average. So, but yeah, like you said, it seemed like Georgia kind of had a beat on what Bama wanted to do. And the second that they settled in the second half, man, it was curtains.
Yeah. And I think, I talked to you about this at halftime on the Spaces, but just the fact that what Georgia is able to do the whole season is sit in 2 high coverages, and you just can't run the football on them. And they never have to get out of it. And I don't care who you are, when you can play with 2 deep safeties and you can do all the sorts of stuff that they want to do with how they can bracket people in that defense, and get after the quarterback, rotating late, if they are going to rotate at all with the pressure. It's tough, man. It's tough. Like Bryce Young won the Heisman, but it's still tough on a quarterback to have to deal through all of that mess when you're looking down the field. Because, you'd love to be able to say, like, at the end of the day, quarterback's not playing well, whatever. Okay, once they spin down to one high, we know what we got. You got outside. Just, hey, you don't have to worry about anything. Throw the ball outside. Throw it on a comeback route, throw it back shoulder, throw it over the top. You can just worry about the outside. Yep. And then obviously now you're talking about a different situation because the safeties can help on the outside when they can stick in too high for the whole game. And I think and again, assuming they don't leave people wide open down the field, it's going to be hard on Bryce Young.
Exactly. I mean, the game was made simple, right? The game was made simple, and this is what the SEC championship game looks like if you don't bust the coverages. In my opinion,
I agree with that. I really agree with that.
Takes nothing away. It takes absolutely zero away from Alabama, and I know that no Alabama fan is going to want to hear that right now. But they were. I mean, and this is still not to say that they weren't the second best team in the country. I still think that they're the second best team in the country.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother discussion that we're going to have throughout this offseason.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, credit to Georgia. They made the adjustments, aka just doing what they do a little bit better in this game. They got the production out of the run game that they needed to set up what they needed in the pass game. It only took 4 or 5 throws in order to make this game work, and Stetson made them. And outside of that fumble, that I'm still a little dubious on our fumble rules for quarterbacks being sacked, but whatever. Outside of that fumble, he basically did what he was supposed to do. He took a lot of sacks, but it was pretty rare that he took bad sacks, right? A lot of it was just like his offensive line getting their asses kicked by guys playing with the high motor, and they were able to get this thing done. For you, how are you going to remember this Georgia team? Is it just going to be great defense got it done, or do you think that they kind of lift themselves into some of the upper pantheon of champions going forward?
I think the SEC championship game leaves a sour taste in your mouth when you're talking about this. It's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate. Mm-hmm. That's really the problem. Because this defense is sickening. It was sickening. It's over now. It was sickening. You were I don't know how much we're going to see a defense like that again, doing the stuff with that, the depth of the defensive line. Dude, we don't even talk about guys like Walker and Smith at edge. Those guys are NFL players, man. I don't know.
Well, we were talking to our guy, Derek Klassen, who does a lot of work on the draft, right? And I was like, look, dude, we're talking about guys, and I don't even know where you'd rank them in Georgia's starting 11. Yeah. And they're going to be pros. Like, you're talking about like maybe the 9th or 10th best guy in their lineup that's gonna be like a not just an NFL player, but probably a plus level NFL player.
It's 2013 Florida State. I mean,
yes,
but then it's
without Jameis
defensively. But then it's like with Jameis changes the whole thing.
I know exactly. I don't want to say without Jameis, but Jameis is a piece of that. He matters.
Like,
is this team just like the? I mean, they're not as good as the 0-1 Canes, but is this just like the 0-1 Canes?
Yeah,
Dorsey playing quarterback around literally 21 other starters that are all going to be pros.
Yeah, who's when Ohio State won it in 2002? It was Craig Krenzel or something.
Maybe you could say like 2006, 2005 Florida, whichever the first one was, where Chris Leak was the starter and Tim Tebow was the backup. Yeah, they had a bunch of pros on that team too.
I mean, the early Bama teams.
Yes, the early Bama team.
I think that's probably
the Greg McElroy, the AJ McCarron.
Yeah.
Jake Coker, all of that era of Bama. Yeah,
I think that's probably the closest.
The closest.
It's just too bad because I want to put this team on a pedestal here.
Right.
The offense and the one game in Atlanta it holds me back.
Yeah, if they run the table undefeated the whole way through, I probably do. I don't know if I would say the team is as good, but I would say from a defensive perspective, their run defensively would have been the same as LSU's run offensively in 2019.
Yeah.
That's probably how I would have framed it. But yeah, the SEC championship.
And you know what? That's maybe not fair to this team because when we see the offense, LSU's offense, blah, blah, blah. Not blah, blah, blah. It meant a lot to me, but like
we only talk about it every other week.
Yeah, but like, it's like offense just, it holds us. It puts, it cuddles us to sleep, right? We love it. Defense doesn't have that effect on us, even though, like I said, LSU's defense that year was just okay, I think, for an LSU defense. And so that's not like fair to Georgia, but it's hard. It's just hard to get a mediocre offense that tastes out of your mouth. One thing I want to say here, this is incredible to me. I have all the Alabama games pulled up since 2015. Okay, so we have 7 years. Mm-hmm. I have all the times that each week they were under pressure, okay, as a team. So not just one quarterback, just as a team.
As a whole team, right.
As a whole team. Guess what game, we just happened to watch it. Most pressures against an Alabama team in one game, 29 in the championship game in Indianapolis. 29 pressures. Guess who's number 2? Miami, Florida this year. Guess who's number 4? Auburn this year. Guess who's number 5? Texas A&M this year. Yeah. Guess who's 6th? Tied for 6th. LSU and Georgia in the SEC championship game. 11th. Tied for 11th. Cincinnati, New Mexico State. New Mexico State is in the top 11. This was, I hate to say it like this. This was just not a good enough Alabama team to warrant a national championship. I think they get smacked by 2020 Alabama, and it's not even close.
Yes. Oh, yes. What? Yes, 100%. I watched what that team did to Ohio State, and that was an Ohio State team that wins the national title every other year, basically, except for 2019 against LSU and 2020 against Bama.
It's just a weird team.
It's a weird year. It's a weird year. Ohio State loses twice otherwise, because I do think that they're one of the 4 best teams in the country, obviously.
It's not even close.
But they played themselves out of it. Then you get the SEC championship game, which basically guarantees that Bama gets the easier matchup of the 2 games. And now you basically get a walk into the national title game. Like, this is, when people start talking about why the sport is fundamentally broken, those are the things that happen where I'm like, I have to submit to that. I just 100% have to submit to that. And I think that as this playoff era goes on, man, like, this does have to be a part of the conversations that we're having, because Alabama's going to have other years where they look more like this than they do the 2020 team. And we're going to have to keep coming back to the fact of, like, obviously this is one of the 5 best teams in terms of talent in the entire sport. But did this team really merit being in this game? Obviously they won the games they needed to win, but yeah, like, I just don't know how I'm going to contextualize this team's national title appearance versus all of the other ones that they've made in the last 2 decades.
Yeah, I agree. This is just a weird team, and I hope it's the beginning of the downfall. That's all I can say.
All right, last question. I'll let you.
All right, wait, let me get you the end of the pressure stats for the whole season.
Okay.
All right, so 2020, obviously they didn't play as many games as the other years. I don't have the per game rates, but I'll just give you the raw numbers.
Okay.
In 2015, okay, they allowed the second. Obviously, 2021 they allowed the most pressures. Mm-hmm. 2015 they allowed the second most pressures in this 7-year time span. They allowed 176. They allowed 244 this year. It's absolutely incredible. Guess what their yards per attempt were on these 244 dropbacks? 7.7. That's Bryce Young, man.
That's all Bryce, dude. That's
crazy.
Bryce. To still be a good quarterback, even while you're being sacked and blitzed into oblivion. Last question I have for you. We'll go out on a light note. 2022 Georgia defense versus the 2019 LSU offense. How many points?
Why are you asking me that?
How many points did they score? Come on, just give me a number.
You know what? Here's my thing would be, I think Georgia could continue to sit in those two high coverages and give LSU some trouble in the same way that Auburn gave LSU trouble that year. Mm-hmm. That's all I'll say. That's Georgia's a great team. LSU great offense. That's all I'm going to say. They could give them trouble. So that all said, probably LSU scores only 38 points, something like that.
There we go. I needed you. That's what we were looking for.
All right. Remember, the Too High podcast is sponsored, of course, by the company we work for, Pro Football Focus. And if you go on PFF.com, you can get 25% off any PFF subscription with the promo code TWOHIGH, TWOHIGH. What can you get with a PFF subscription? All of PFF's locked article content, that would be me and Diante's content for the most part. NFL betting dashboards. NFL Greenline is up 27 units this season, so go and bet and find the best plays for wildcard weekend. Player prop tool, which shows the positive and negative value for every NFL prop. An NFL draft guide that honestly is sick. A college football preview guide coming in a few months that's also sick, and much more. So support the pod. Use promo code TWOHIGH, TWOHIGH, for 25% off any sub. Okay, when you hear our voices again, it will be 8 hours ago. Yep. Yeah, earlier today. All right, peace.
All right, guys, see you.
Okay, national championship is over. We have gone back in time. It is Monday afternoon right now, and we're going to go to the NFL coaching carousel stuff like I talked about earlier. And this part of the show is presented by Manscaped. Cheers to 2022 and resolutions you can actually keep. How about having clean and shiny balls all year round? Our sponsors at Manscaped are here to save your balls this season and make the ball drop into 2022 the cleanest and sexiest ever. Set your first New Year's resolution with good intentions and join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com and use promo code PFF for 20% off and free shipping. Set your first New Year's resolution with good intentions and join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com and use promo code PFF for 20% off and free shipping. Remember, in the Performance Package 4.0, you get the new body wash. You get, of course, the hair and nose trimmer. You get the ear trimmer. You get the razor, the Lawnmower 4.0, which is very good, and the nice little travel bag that I use whenever I leave the country. Get 20% off and free shipping with promo code PFF at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with promo code PFF at manscaped.com. It's New Year, no pubes in 2022 with manscaped.com. All right, let's get into it. First, I think the most surprising thing that happened so far, this is, we're recording this Monday afternoon, so the most surprising thing is the Dolphins letting go of Brian Flores, I think. I think considering that we knew that his first year in the job was the tank job, okay, great, so their record was going to be bad, and it was bad. But then, and we had problems with their record, especially this season, but the record was actually fine the last 2 years. I mean, they weren't bottoming out. They weren't like, last in the league. And they played rookie quarterbacks. The quarterbacks they played the last 3 seasons: Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jacoby Brissett, Tua Tagovailoa. Like, you're getting fired for that when the defense that is what you were brought in to do has been really good. Again, we've talked about how the schedule has made the defense probably look a little better, but still, I mean, the defense is going to finish in the top 5 in EPA per play this year, and now he's gone. Your thoughts?
I don't know how to read this other than ownership deciding that they're all in on the quarterback, honestly. And the quarterback maybe just not having the best relationship with the head coach is kind of what it seemed like to me. Because to your point, right, if you're evaluating a head coach by how did you treat your baby? His baby is the defense. And if you look at, last year was obviously an outlier season with how effective they were, a lot of turnover luck and things like that. But even during the win streak, right, we saw their conversion down defense get a lot better. They kind of got back to creating some of the havoc. I think that the peak game, I think we all remember, is that Thursday night game against the Ravens that really kind of kicked off all their momentum in the second half of the season. They were better on the defensive end of the ball than they were the first half of the year, and they found a way to make that offense functional. And I think that that's probably one of the least talented offenses in the NFL, basically outside of Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki, obviously. So to me, I'm not sure how else to read it other than Tua wanting an offensive-minded guy to lead the charge going forward for the rest of his contract there, especially if it seems like they're not going to have some easy trade partner. Obviously, the information in the offseason that we got about Deshaun Watson is probably cool with everybody's jets, even if there is still some like passing interest in that, and obviously if that gets resolved between now and the draft, then that clearly opens up new opportunities for teams to maybe go trade for him. But for now, it looks like they're all in on him. And even if they were to make a move, they clearly want something more offensive minded, more quarterback friendly, I think, in terms of their leadership, because the defense was fine. And I think that he made the coaching changes that needed to be made. And they were able to kind of cobble together an average year with a below average roster on the offensive end of the ball.
Yeah, I think that there's clear a disconnect between, there's rumor that, Tua and Flores after the game on Sunday were like yelling at each other, whatever, got into an argument, whatever.
Right.
And that's probably, like I agree with you. There's clearly a disconnect between head coach and quarterback, and they picked the quarterback. Now, I personally would not have picked the quarterback, but that's their decision, I guess. And they picked the GM too, for that matter, who has really had an up and down time there, as they've had some, this year's draft class was pretty good with Waddle, Phillips, and Holland making plays for them. But then they've also had 3 first-round picks in 2020 and didn't hit one of them. Austin Jackson's still pretty young. Maybe he develops. You don't want to count him out. 2 maybe he develops, but like they haven't done anything with those first and second round picks there. So I don't know. They traded Fitzpatrick for those picks that got nothing. Christian Wilkins has been okay. Gesicki's been okay, like you said, but it's really, they haven't really gotten anything from these draft picks enough to build a real team around. Yet the defense has still been good. Even while trading Mika Fitzpatrick, the defense has still been good. So to me, it's definitely just them picking. And then clearly there's must have been just some issues personality-wise between Flores and Greer, or Flores and Stephen Ross, the owner, and Tua. So that I guess is what we end up doing. The funny thing with Tua is the funny thing with Flores getting the job is when he gets the job, they knew that quarterback, they're going to have to take quarterback. This wasn't a situation where he's coming in with a quarterback already. We talked about it. This was the tank job, the tank for Tua thing. And so they take the quarterback. He's not good. He's okay, I guess, whatever. But they knew that they were going to have to take a quarterback, and they picked the wrong quarterback.
Especially that's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to. They got the wrong.
So why is that on Flores?
It's not. Honestly, it's not.
If they had the quarterback, like Staley with the Chargers this year. Mm-hmm. I still have high hopes for the Chargers going forward, making the playoffs year in, year out, even though it's a tough division. But Staley coming in and then them not making the playoffs, or let's say the offense had just cratered in his first year, that would be a problem because you came in with the quarterback already. You knew what you were getting into. But with this situation, it's they came in knowing we have the worst roster in the league and we're going to take a quarterback, and that quarterback has to work out.
Right.
And obviously, I know for both of us, that quarterback didn't work out.
No. I think the offense they're trying to build around him can make him serviceable throughout the tenure, I guess, of his rookie deal, if you're not going to have an easy replacement option. But yeah, they're misses. Their draft picks were misses. And, sometimes you get caught with that. And I think the most unfortunate thing with Brian Flores is that now I think he's probably going to end up lumped into all those Belichick assistants that have gone out and, eventually been fired by the place they were hired as head coach, which is unfortunate because, you cannot evaluate what his tenure was in Miami in the same way you did Max Patricia's, or, any of these other assistants that we know of left have failed and then ended up back on the Patriots staff, at a later date or whatever. I think that there was actually something being built there, like you said, considering the fact that they went all in on the youth movement and didn't really hit on much. They were, and the free agent acquisitions that they made actually ended up working out pretty well. And they were able to develop guys you think of Javon Holland, you think of being able to get something out of Emmanuel Ogba, right? You think about guys like that, being able to find a way to make Jerome Baker work. here and there. Like they've clearly, I think that Brian Flores can be credited the same way he was at New England with developing the defensive talent and finding a way to make something work for them. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when they went into the draft for Tua, knowing that they had set up this entire roster to go get the guy, then you are all in on him. And if the head coach and him aren't on the same page, then you move on from the head coach before you move on for the quarterback, because the entire organizational direction was kind of pointed in Tua's way, basically from halfway through Tua's last year at Alabama, basically. So that part sucks, but it is what it is. And I mean, I won't weep too many tears for Brian Flores, because I think that he's probably going to be at the top of the list of candidates to be the next head coach hired by one of the other places that has an opening.
I'm curious by what Tua is going to talk about it, and the Chris Greer and just the Dolphins organization is going to talk about we want an offensive coach. We're an offensive coach. Now I don't know what was going on in the building. I mean, I think for the most part, and I could be totally wrong about this, I think for the most part, like when you bring in an offensive guy, he tends to not, for the most part, have too much of a say. He doesn't want to have too much of a say in the defensive side. And when you bring in a defensive guy, he lets the offense do his thing. That seems to be how football in the NFL works now. Like you really have to do your own thing here and let the offense work and let the defense do its thing, depending on what position you come in on. So I wonder now, it's like, okay, well, we need a new offense here for Tua. Well, actually, the offense itself schematically worked pretty well for Tua. So what are you doing? Like, are you gonna go and bring in Brian Dable and run 4 wide sets? Now, obviously, Brian Dable had run different stuff when he was with Alabama or with the Patriots, but like, you're gonna go run Haas juke every play with Tua? Like, you know what I mean? Like what they were doing, and now I don't know how the 2OC system worked, whatever, but the results on the field, like to me, the offense worked. Okay, we talk about RPOs all the time. You have a quarterback who's okay, is an average quarterback.
Way to catch yourself there.
If you have that type of quarterback, then running this type of offense with all the RPOs, and especially keep talking about it, especially these downfield RPOs. Like these aren't just bubble RPOs. These are RPOs to create real offense, right. And it worked for them to create real offense. So where are they going to go from here? Now, if they keep the 2 OCs or one of the OCs, yeah, okay, I'm fine with it, whatever. But like going forward, like I don't know if a better offense to create an ability to move the football with Tua right now, where Tua is after these last 2 seasons, than what they did for him. Like you just can't put him in any offense. Now, that doesn't mean an offensive corner can't come in and see, hey, you look at all the shit they did that was really good, I'm going to do that.
Right.
But like, I think about, this is just a theoretical thing, like it's never happened. But if I think of like Sean Payton or like Pete Carmichael or Joe Lombardi, like going in, like those Saints guys going into a Dolphin situation and being like, hey, we don't run RPOs, like that would be done. Like, and again, right, none of the Saints guys are going there, but there are going to be coordinators like that who are going to go and say, we're going to do my thing, and it's not going to work in the same way that this offense worked this season. Unless Tua improves, then everything we're saying is moot.
Right. I will say, like, I forget who tweeted it. I wish I remembered so I could credit them properly. But the gist of what I saw in the tweet was, one of the elements of an RPO is the run, and it's almost unfair to evaluate this offense if it has like one of the worst offensive lines in the league. And maybe we need to see if they can build that up and check back in. And I think that that's actually fair. Like, if you want to talk big picture, now that brings us back to the conversation we were just having about the general manager still being in place. Maybe not understanding why that's the case if you're letting go of the head coach. But I do think that if the RPO thing is really going to be the piece of your identity, then yes, they do need to do something with this offensive line. You don't have to have road graders, but we talk about it all the time with the spread stuff, right? Like, if you want to be, and they try to be more condensed, but if you're going to play basically zone schemes with RPOs, which means that your double teams can't work down the field, They're almost always working laterally, and you have to have double teams because if it's one-on-one blocks and you can't push the guy downfield, you're basically guaranteed to lose, right? A stalemate is a loss for you as an offensive lineman in the zone scheme. Then you do have to have some guys that can really work through, getting double teams in, or guys who can at least hold up a little bit better in these one-on-ones. So you're not asking so much of your running backs to create, before you even get to the line of scrimmage. So I do think that that's fair. But again, I mean, this all kind of comes down to like philosophical stuff. And I know that we kind of chuckle when we talk about Tua because I know how you feel about him and you know how I feel about him. But I do think that it's noteworthy to say that like you do have to attach all these qualifiers to this quarterback, man. Like it's not to say that you can't ever get successful offense out of it. Because I do think that where they were trending, at least when they played okay on offense, that's what it should look like with this quarterback. I don't think you're dropping this guy in the Shanahan system and having him run a whole bunch of boots because I don't think that he's looking to throw the ball with enough depth and definitely doesn't. I don't know if he has an arm strength outside the numbers to try to fire those sail routes in that we talk about or the deep comebacks and things like that as a bootlegging quarterback. Like you're just not going to see enough of that. He's not throwing those strikes or, those glance, he can throw a glance. He's not throwing the drift route like we've talked about before, right? Like that's just not his deal, or at least that's not playing to his ultimate strengths. To your point about the Saints and teams that are more like quick game heavy, Mike McCarthy wouldn't fit there, Sean Payton doesn't fit there. Guys who want to rely on that kind of style of offense, underneath that kind of the West Coast offense tree, that's not for Tua either. So we are talking about a very particular.
They're going to hire Jason Garrett. Watch.
Oh God. You know what? You putting that in the air is probably going to make that happen because he'll never leave. He will never leave the NFL. But I think that it's important to keep in mind that this is not some just add water situation in terms of the quarterback. We obviously know that the roster has to be worked on, but specifically with the quarterback position, this is somebody that I think you have to build the offense in a very certain way around him. And we'll see. If I'm the Dolphins, I'm sure we'll kind of get into the greater conversation about who's the candidate where. But if there's a place for an Eric Bieniemy to go, that might be it. Because I think that he's going to be a little bit more amenable to the kind of offense that you need to run, I think, to make Tua work at the NFL level. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm looking at right now.
There's pieces that are comparable to what Bieniemy had or has right now in Kansas City with a tight end that you could put on the backside and use one-on-one, who's not like a guy you want to be like a traditional blocker type of wide tight end. And then you have the speedster with Jalen Waddle, so that's, Gesicki and Kittle, Gesicki and Kelsey comparison, and then the Waddle and Hill comparison. So I think it's like the poor man's version of the Chiefs offense. And then you are
missing number 15. Right?
Yeah. So that's a problem. But I do think that type of offense could work, creating opportunities where you get the, quote unquote defined reads for Tua by putting Gesicki by himself, which I know they do a little bit by himself as a split receiver, isolated, and then using Waddle on all these over routes, which again they do already. I mean, I get because the offense is good. Like I keep saying, the offense, I wouldn't change. I would just try and let Tua develop in this offense. You know what I mean? Yeah, I just don't see a better schematic fit than what the fuck they did. Now, maybe you can bring in a guy who's not even an Eric Bieniemy who runs a similar-ish type of offense. Right. You can bring in a Wishbone offensive coordinator and say, hey, we actually realize that even though I've coached Wishbone my whole life, this offense with RPOs and this stuff, blah blah blah, is actually best. Like a guy
you can get like a Matt Canada, right? Who's like the ultimate. I'm trying to manufacture literally every yard I can get down the football field. That would work as well,
Yeah. So I just think they got to hit on an offensive lineman. I mean, just looking through it. They took Eichenberg in the second round, Austin Jackson in the first round, Robert Hutton in the second round, Solomon Kinley in the fourth, Michael Dieter in the third. Again, Austin Jackson was really young, though they probably could have gotten him a little later in the draft than 18th overall, whatever. He's young. Maybe it'll work out. It hasn't worked out yet. I believe they even moved him to guard this season, and that's been like whatever. Or they might have moved Hunt. No, I don't remember. They moved someone to inside, and it's just, man, they just haven't hit on any type of lineman, and that's really hasn't helped at all.
Right.
But I think even Tua from a clean pocket, it's not like it's that good.
I was going to say, yeah, he's not blowing you away from a clean pocket anyway. But you do, I mean, that's priority number one, which is why I'm like, I don't know why this has to be a personality type move, because I still think that, letting go of Flores still it leaves open the same doors that needed to be addressed, right? Like, you still got to fix the trenches. I don't care who the head coach is. Nobody's going to be able to create good offense or sustainable run defense, unless they improve what they're doing between the trenches. And, there's nothing you can do about the fact that Tua is going to have his limitations in obvious passing downs. Like, these are the problems that have existed, and these are the problems that will persist. Like, that's not being papered over just by making a head coaching hire. They have real talent deficiencies that have to be addressed right now.
I wonder, like, what people think goes on with, like, the difference between having a offensive head coach versus a defensive coach. As the head coach,
I have theories.
Well, I just I don't think like if we stick to this example with Flores, everyone, whatever position you coach, whatever side of the ball you coach on, has ideas of what the other side of the ball should be doing. I get that, right. And if you're the head coach, it's your prerogative to make those things clear. But I think for the most part, like, just because you bring in a defensive coach doesn't mean you can't have a good offense. Like, bring in a guy who's going to run the offense at a high level. And I think, like, I don't know how handsy these guys are. I just don't. And maybe I'm
especially
wrong.
Especially at
maybe
the NFL.
These guys
at the NFL level, yeah, like, I don't know that guys are overriding, offensive play calls. Outside, I mean, obviously a head coach obviously kind of reserves the right to do so. But
yeah,
I don't believe that these defensive guys are meddlers. I mean, I have a take that and I don't know, maybe it's justified in a way that I just don't understand, but I continue to feel and will always feel like a defensive head coach with a bad offense is exponentially more likely to get fired than an offensive coach with a bad defense. Why that is, I don't know. And if it's just as simple as the quarterback is too valuable, especially in the NFL context, to have a bad offense with, then hey, it is what it is. Far be it for me to complain about it. But I don't know if it's right or justified all the time to say that the offense is struggling and it's because of this defensive head coach, especially at the NFL level, man. These people want to win. Like, I think that we're kind of beyond the era, especially now that everybody is embracing the spread. I think that we're beyond the era of defensive coaches feeling like you have to win every game 13-6. Like, I don't think that that's where we're at. And I don't think that that's where Brian Flores is out. Like, if I'm judging off of personality types and philosophies, like, we're talking about one of the most cover zero blitz heavy defenses in the league, right? Like, so I'd have to believe that if he could get an offense together that would be as explosive as he wants to be defensively, that he would welcome that. But you actually got to have the dudes to make it happen. Like, if reporting comes out that maybe there were certain moves that they wanted to make with free agency and he said no because he wanted certain defensive guys there, and maybe those defensive guys don't pan out, then hey, I'll submit to that as well, right? Because now you're getting into real team building stuff, and those have ramifications that last year over year. But if I'm evaluating this offense just on face value and what I think of all the pieces and how they performed, this was a year in the right direction.
I know, right?
Like, that's why it's just rare to me that you make a firing when I think that they're heading in the right direction.
The one thing I'll say about the hiring an offensive guy versus a defensive guy is that if you hire a defensive guy and the offense is good, you're going to lose that guy to a head coaching job.
Yes.
So I get that. But here's my thing. Now, obviously, if the offense is good, then you lose the guy, your OC in 2 years in. But I also think we kind of like overplay the quarterback and, head coach who is an offensive guy connection over the course of a long time. Because I think about like McCarthy and Rodgers and how bad that got at the end. But we always kind of forget that when we look at Breeze and Peyton. Oh my God, Breeze and Peyton are so good together. But that's like just a stylistic thing with Breeze. Breeze was always going to just run the shit at a super high level of execution.
Right.
Whereas with Rodgers, there was always going to be his ability to go sentient and just not do anything that
clearly evidenced by 2021 and 2022.
Yeah,
this is a guy that at any point can decide that I'm going in a different direction than whatever it is that everybody else is doing.
So like I don't know if it's like always super necessary. This sounds really dumb, but like I don't even know if it's always super necessary to be like you need a coach, a quarterback, and a play caller to be together for 10 years. It's like
yes, I mean
if the guy is good, it's fine. Like you're fine. Like the quarterback is good, you're fine, man.
You've talked about this as a concept on its own, right? That like once you really at the NFL level, when we're talking about quarterbacks, you're not, as an offensive coach, you're not stepping in. You should not be stepping in with whatever your genius offense is, because if you're talking about really making it work with the quarterback, you're just going to do what he's comfortable with. We talked about it with Matt Canada. We've talked about it with coaches in Phillip Rivers. We've talked about it with coaches in Peyton Manning. We talked about it with coaches in Russell Wilson. Like, you can bring in as many guys as you want, but if the quarterback decides, I'm not throwing that football over there, I don't care what your play call is, or I'm only comfortable doing X, Y, and Z because this is what I've been doing, then that's what you are confined to.
Adam Gase is the best example of that.
Yes.
100%. They went to the Super Bowl and then won a Super Bowl. I don't remember when Gase was there, but they were really good on offense when Peyton Manning was there with Adam Gase. And then Adam Gase didn't have Peyton Manning and they weren't good. So like, you just are
right.
Whatever. All right. Let us move on to the Minnesota Vikings. Zimmer's out and the GM, Rick Spielman, is out. So kind of complete rebuild, but also not a complete rebuild because of the roster construction.
I was going to say that roster is a little too stuck, I think, to do a whole lot with right now.
So, yeah, like your thoughts on I guess, how did it go wrong? Do you think that it's a quick fix? Do you think it's a longer rebuild? And I think I probably know the answer, but like, yeah, your thoughts.
So to me, I think to answer your second question, I think a lot of that comes down to not what you think the ceiling is with Kirk Cousins, but just like if you pivoted offensively, how much more do you think there is to get from an efficiency standpoint or an explosiveness standpoint that exists? I think that where it went wrong, a lot of that I think was kind of evidenced by, you look at the press conferences and get a pretty clear idea that there just seemed to be some kind of souring there.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just Zimmer maybe being done with the job. Like we see that happen pretty often, right? He's been there for freaking ever, especially by current NFL terms. Like he's had that job for a long, long while. So I would not be blown away if it just got stale to him. There was some reporting that was kind of coming out given the conclusion of the season from like Eric Kendricks and a few other guys that like maybe the way the franchise was heading from a cultural perspective was starting to feel a little bit more like draconian and, a little bit less enjoyable. Like that happens as well, especially with the guy who's been there in a roster that's been the core of it. It's been together for, at least a half decade plus at this point now. So I think that a lot of it is just kind of like the natural process of things going stale over time. If I'm the Vikings, again, we're talking personality type, we're talking philosophy type. If I had to throw a name that I'd immediately be interested in, it would be like a Kellen Moore type. Number one, they're probably going to want a younger guy after going with Zim for as long as they did. They're probably going to want an offensive guy because their quarterback costs what he costs. And they've drafted and, bought a lot of assets that, kind of have signaled over the last 3 or 4 years that since they got Kirk Cousins that they know they need to have their offense looking a certain way. So I would expect it to be something in that realm. Try to be multiple on offense and a guy that can maybe squeeze just 3 to 5% more out of Kirk Cousins than what you already have and see kind of what that is. But we do kind of have to face the fact that the defense is probably aging in a way that's going to make it hard for this thing to be maintained no matter what you do anyways. And I think that the way that this year ended and the way that last season ended were both kind of indications of, I think, some atrophy happening within this franchise. And I think that a pivot to a rebuild is probably closer than a pivot to Super Bowl contention anyways.
Do you think that 2022, Kirk Cousins is a starting quarterback? 1 year left on the contract. If you cut him, it would be $45 million, and then he's a UFA. So it's like I feel like maybe you just stick around with one more season, and
that's
then
what I think.
Hope that like again the defense is aging, the offensive line is no good. Kirk Cousins is Kirk fucking Cousins, but I just wonder if you could just say like something fresh with Cousins. Like again, because we went from Kubiak to Kubiak.
Right.
We went from Stefanski to Kubiak, so it's like maybe something completely different. Now I think this offense maximizes him.
Yes, I do too.
But like you said, maybe a Kellen Moore where it's more of where it's a little something different. Maybe something else where it's a little something different. Just gives you that like you said, 5%, 10% spark. Where you can just make one more run at it. And then obviously hitting on all the draft picks, hitting in free agency, which is possible, and you just make one more run at it. And if it doesn't work, then it's it. It's over.
So let me frame this question to you then. So if we were to use it, I think if we were GMs, we probably look at this similarly, like you were laying out, right? This is Kirk Cousins last year on the contract where we're really on the hook, and then there's some freedom. So if it's you making the decisions as a GM, how are you treating that last year? Is that last year an all-in year, or is that last year maybe stocking some things up for the future without this guy?
Yeah, I think it's more of a hope you don't make any major moves in free agency. Hope you hit on your first-round pick and maybe your second-round pick.
Yep, yeah.
Because there's players there, man. So if you just get something fresh, like again, it's like something fresh on offense. And even on defense now, because like you said, defense hasn't played very well either the past few years. And the defense is going to change completely. The offense is going to change completely.
Yep.
So just something to give you guys, to give the Vikings a spark in the last year. Now, the issue is always going to be, well, what if they make the playoffs again and lose in the second round or the first round of the playoffs? Yep. And then it's really like we are thinking we're getting to minimum a championship game. And really, minimum a Super Bowl. And if not, then it's over for Cousins.
We're cutting bait. Yeah, I was going to say. If it's honestly, at this point now, because of the age of the roster, the way they've trended in the second half of seasons, like this is me speaking, maybe not how Vikings fans would feel. If it's not a Super Bowl appearance, man, it's time to cut bait.
Yeah,
it's because it's only going to get more prohibitively expensive to try to keep this thing around any longer. Anyways, like it's time.
He's going to be 34 next year. Like, that's nothing to scoff at either. So it's like, this is it, right? Exactly. But I'm okay with them saying, we can make one more push. Now, if it doesn't work out, you don't fire the new coaching staff after 1 year.
Right.
Like, even if it bottoms, right? Even if the new offense doesn't work with Cousins, a new defensive coordinator comes in and doesn't work, and you win like 5 games or something, that like it's okay. Like you're building something for the years to come. You can get rid of Cousins, and then everything is okay. So yeah, I think like you probably have one more year, because what are you going to do with $45 million cap hit? Like
not a damn thing, dude. Not a.
No one's going to trade. No one's trading for him. He's 34, man.
He's 34. He's 34. Last year of his deal, most expensive year of the deal. Like you got to ride this thing out. Now, what I will say, and this is one of the things that almost helps, is that they've already kind of started to build up what maybe the future of this offense can look like after him with some young guys. We know, obviously, Justin Jefferson is a top 10 wide receiver already. You have Carousel, who I thought played decently for a rookie tackle. You know, I think that you have something there. You still have Thielen, who can be a positive contributor. Like, you've got Dalvin Cook still on roster. Like, there are pieces to get you through, whatever transition period may be coming. You would probably obviously like to have seen more out of Kellen Mond, or have Zimmer have seen more out of Kellen Mond.
Don't even talk to me about Kellen Mond.
Because then at least that transition is made a little bit easier. You look at like what Philadelphia was able to get out of their second round pick and Jalen Hurts, and kind of squeezing their way into the playoffs. And all of a sudden now the trajectory looks different as you start phasing out some of their older guys, and bringing in a new regime. So that's one of the things that hurts, is that you'd probably feel a little bit more optimistic if that had happened. But like you said, man, I mean, you got to cut bait anyways. It's going to be a new GM, so you're getting some kind of organizational pivot no matter what. I don't think a new GM is going to step in and look at this roster and say, hey, all these 30-plus-year-old guys, we're going to go try to punch our ticket one more time. I think that this is going to be, if there's ever a year to kind of start trading guys for draft picks, you're trying to pick up as many comp picks as you can by losing guys in free agency, like, this is the year to do it. Get some cheap vets, ride this thing out one more time. If you get a blow-up year from Kirk Cousins, which he's always liable to do, because he plays football in a way that's very efficient, and for the most part, like, if you're efficient, you're going to give yourself an opportunity to have some really effective seasons or stretches of a season. So it's not to say that they're about to go 4-13 next year. I don't think that that's the case, but they are hovering in this 6-11 to 7-10 type of area. And to me, if that's where you're going to be with the veteran roster like this, now is the time to go ahead and start getting ready for, whatever the next era of Vikings football is going to be.
And I don't even think, like, man, I mean, I'm a Kirk Cousins stan here, but, like, I don't even think, like, giving him that big money was like, I would have done the same thing.
Right deal.
I would have
Honestly,
been wrong.
it's the right deal. Right move, right deal. I mean, they went to an NFC championship game, right? So.
Yeah, I just... But you're right about
they made the NFC playoffs
though.
basically almost every year.
Almost every year, right? And they won a couple
so,
games. But you're right about the age, man. Thielen is in his 30s. Harrison Smith, Anthony Barr. How old? Let me check how old Kendrick. I don't think Kendrick is as old, but like
he might be 29 though, if he's not 30.
You're right. So like, oh man, this is such an old roster. But it's always funny to me because like
Eric Kendricks is 29, so he's turning 30. He was turning 30 in February. So yeah, all the core is 30 plus basically.
Yeah, it's just funny though to me. Like, one of the issues is this is a failure. Okay. I guess it's a failure. But I think about the Saints since 2017. I believe since 2017, even including this season where they only won 9 games, they have the most wins since 2017. 0 Super Bowls. 3 playoff wins, 2 playoff wins, whatever. And it's like, it's a failure. It's like, man, like, I don't know if we can say that. And the same with the Vikings. It's like, man, they've won a bunch of games. I know the problem is you paid the quarterback the amount of money you paid the quarterback is to win a Super Bowl. I understand
Yes.
But it's like, man, they're not that far. They just played with Aaron Rodgers. They played in the division with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, what is there to do? What do you want me to do with that? If I'm consistently in second place and I'm in second place to Aaron Rodgers, I mean, I don't know what you want me to say. Man.
Means you're never getting a home game,
right?
Right?
You're never going to win your division.
2017, they got home games because it was the end of the McCarthy era.
Right. Yeah, when things looked like it might have been cratering for Green Bay, and now obviously it's not with LaFleur here. So
I don't know. It's like, yes, it was a failure, but I don't love just being like, well, they didn't win the Super Bowl, so it's a failure.
Well, see,
when they've had a good stretch, they've had a really good stretch, man.
But to your point, this is how teams end up trapped in, hey, we're going to continue to ride out our quarterback, right? Because you still have Chicago and Detroit behind you. So you can count like, hey, we can get 4 out of our 6 division wins done, and if we lose both to the Packers, that's fine. We split with them, we're great, and now we're basically we just got to be 500 the rest of the way, and we're a playoff team. Like, so that is how you end up in situations where you're a 10-win team, but you're not actually a good team because of, your schedule or whatever. But yeah, I think this has to be a directive where no matter what, you're moving on. And I can't wait for the Vikings to go out and hire Doug Peterson and put my guy through the same last year of the contract torture that he was just left in Philadelphia before a rebuild comes. So hopefully they go get some fresh faces in and they're able to make this pivot. I do think that on the defensive end specifically, because their corners have really kind of gone in the wrong direction.
Oh boy.
Because of the age of their veterans, there is some danger in that being a very uncomfortable pivot on the defensive end of the ball. Like we have to be prepared for the fact that thing might really bottom out. I mean, they're always at risk of it if Harrison Smith or Eric Kendricks ever has to miss extended time anyways, because those two cover up so much in that defense. But yeah, I do think that it's time from top to bottom, you've got to look at making as many moves as you can, trying to build the next era around Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson, and that needs to be what the directive is going forward.
All right, before we move on to the other two teams that made coaching changes on Monday, just want to remind you guys that if you want a chance to win the ultimate game day feast, whether it's football success or financial savvy, winning starts with asking us questions. Well, not me and Diante, but other people. Ask other people questions. Would you like to know what it's like behind the scenes with Al Michaels on Sunday Night Football? How about a need to know for your financial future? Western and Southern is teaming up with PFF's very own Chris Collinsworth to share insights that can help put you ahead on both your fantasy and financial scoreboards. Every submission earns you a chance to win the ultimate feast to celebrate football's favorite Sunday. Will cover your catering costs up to $2,500. Coordinate your order from a restaurant near you and have it delivered on February 13th, 2022. And don't forget to check out the Chris Collinsworth podcast and Western and Southern's Instagram for answers to the best questions each week. Submit your questions at westernsouthern.com/askchris. One more time, that is westernsouthern.com/askchris. If you're watching on YouTube, check out the link in the description below. Remember, with Western and Southern, you can rest assured on game day. All right, let's go to Chicago, where, again, we have both head coach and GM out. Expected. Nagy had his run there. Pace had their run there. Up and down, obviously. It is funny how we talk about Nagy all of a sudden, because there was a time when Nagy was the shit because he was able to work with Mitchell Trubisky and get Mitchell Trubisky consistently to the playoffs. Like that is when you think about it now. Saying a coach got Mitch Trubisky to the playoffs and to the Pro Bowl, that is unbelievable. Like no one will believe you in 25 years.
Build a statue
on Wikipedia or whatever. Build a statue. So like our collective narrative about Nagy has definitely soured, considering what we thought of him, 2 years into this tenure. But he's out, and they have a quarterback, at least, I believe. My opinion, Justin Fields is going to be good still. So I guess the question is like, so the Bears, I think they are so happy that the Raiders are going to the playoffs because they get first crack at Harbaugh now. I think Harbaugh, clearly the rumblings and the rumors that he wants to get out of Michigan. There were issues there with the payment to him and how he was getting paid and stuff like that. So I think he wants out of Michigan. And now the Raiders, it was so hot last weekend. Like Harbaugh to the Raiders was so hot. And the Raiders won. So now Chicago gets the first crack at him. And I think that would be a really good hire. Now my thing with Harbaugh is like this. It's hard to not make the case that he is an elite coach in the history of football. Right. He turned around San Diego. He turned around Stanford. He turned around the 49ers, and he turned around Michigan. Like, that is fucking crazy, dude.
And let's be clear, right? Like, on what turned around means. Like, the University of San Diego became conference champions in a way that they had never been. You go to Stanford, you start winning the Pac-12. You go to Rose Bowl, you win the Rose Bowl at Stanford. Okay, you go to the 49ers, which is fresh off of Mike Singletary. Let's keep that in mind. The Mike Singletary era is what they're fresh off of. He goes there, they make a Super Bowl appearance and are basically short of the Legion of Boom, the best team in the NFC over a 4-year stretch, basically. He leaves there and goes to Michigan, and they just get to the playoffs, right? So we're talking about a guy that wins and wins a lot, basically everywhere he goes. Now, I know that there was a but coming, so I will tee this back up to you. What's on the other end of that?
Well, because I just think the Michigan thing, I understand what he was brought in to do, and he didn't do it except for this last year. I get that 100%. But there's a different, I'm sorry, Michigan fans. You're not Ohio State, and for the most part, you really haven't ever been.
Right.
I'm sorry. There was a really good stretch in the late 90s. There were probably some other stretches, but even your guy, shouldn't be your guy, but he's still your guy for a lot of you guys. Bo Schembechler didn't win a national title, man. I don't even know how many freaking Rose Bowls he went to. Like, Ohio State is that team in the Midwest.
Yeah, it's them in Notre Dame. Is what it is.
So what he did coming off of the Brady Hoke and the Rich Rodriguez era is pretty damn good. Like, I'm sorry you couldn't get over the hump and you couldn't beat the collection of talent that happens in Columbus every year until this year. But he still turned the program around. So again, it sucks he couldn't get over the hump until this past year. But what he's done in his career is nothing short of astounding. And I know there's a lot of people involved with winning and losing games, but for him to do it at 4 straight places, all 4 places he's been as a head coach, it's crazy elite. Can he do it again? That's honestly.
Well, I mean, if you're going to leave for a spot, I would say that taking a Bears job is probably the right job to take for him. Like, I can very easily envision Harbaugh stepping into Chicago and getting damn near instant success.
I know.
Now right? This just begs the question: are you prepared to see Justin Fields in the Greg Roman offense? Because you know that's what's happening. I don't hate it. Hey, let me just say
either.
Let me say wait a minute though. Go ahead. Hate it. I don't hate it. I don't know if I love it, but I don't hate it.
You know what offense I would love to see Justin Fields in? The Josh Gaddis offense. Now we're cooking.
Yes.
Or maybe Pep Hamilton comes in. Like I think at the end of the day they're bringing the gang back together. Like
that's what I think. If Harbaugh goes to the league, he's bringing.
You're getting Fangio, you're getting Roman, you're getting Gaddis, you're getting all these. You're getting Pep Hamilton. You're getting all these guys back.
He's putting
and I'm cool with it, man. First of all, bring Fangio back to Chicago. I mean, we're talking about the Broncos in a second, but like wherever Fangio goes, the defense is going to be good. I think that's for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm telling you right now, he's leaving this offseason as the highest paid defensive coordinator in the NFL. I think he's going to be in high demand.
So there's whoever goes to Chicago, I think there's a good situation. Got to hit on the offensive line, continue to hit on the offensive line, and you're hoping that Oklahoma State kid Tevin Jenkins turns out good. Who's been up and down in the first few starts there. So you're hoping that works out. The receiving. I don't know what happened to them this season. Allen Robinson disappeared off the face of the earth, and I believe he's a UFA. So he's out. Forget it. You gotta find someone, and that's probably the first pick that they make. It's gotta be like Drake London or Wilson or Olave or someone like that. It has to be. It's got to be somebody. But I think at the end of the day, Fields should be good. And so
he should be good, yes. He should be good. You go out, you fix that offensive line, you get one of the receivers like you were saying, man. Like I have no reason to believe, and a lot of this I know was me kind of beating the drum even when he was struggling in the first half of the year, but I am 100% steadfast in if you build it around Fields, dude, you are going to see a very, very good NFL quarterback. Especially when you talk about a guy like Harbaugh as a candidate where we know what kind of system he's walking in the door with and what he's been able to do everywhere he's been at with that. You start talking about Gaddis, if he's available, and you start bringing in some of the spread stuff that they were able to do and still running, their power run game and all of that at the NFL level. That's something that's really intriguing to me as well. I 100% believe if you fix just half of the offensive line and go get a receiver and you have a real system with a real identity, which is something that Nagy really struggled with the last 2 seasons, I think that there's reason to believe that there's a lot of positivity coming out of this offseason in Chicago.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point of Nagy struggling with an identity. And a lot of that has to do with quarterback play. You're trying to figure it out.
Yep.
But yeah, he was going back. Who's calling the plays? What type of offense are we going to base out of? And it never coalesced. It coalesced that one year where he was still kind of in that Reid, Andy Reid type of offense, and it was 17 or 18, whatever it was. But yeah, he just never figured it out. He got nervous and he just said, "Start shooting shit against the wall. We're gonna do this, and we're gonna do that, and we're gonna do this," and it didn't really work. So yeah, I agree that I think that having some coherency in the offense. I think that to me is number one thing, and I think obviously it could be really good pretty quickly. I think with the type of quarterback they have, off the top of your head, anyone else that you would say you would like to see with Fields as a coordinator or as a head coach? What type of offense, I guess, that you would be looking at? What about like a guy like
Dable is a guy you can sell me on. Dable is a guy you can sell me on. I'm trying to think outside of that. I mean, Leftwich, we've talked about like the Bruce Arians offense.
Leftwich to me makes more sense than Dable, I think.
I can see that. Especially in terms of like ultimately playing to the greatest strengths of Justin Fields' game. I would probably lean more Leftwich and Dable as well. I agree with you on that. Those are probably the two from an offensive perspective that come to mind the most. Like I've thought about guys like a Doug Peterson. To me, I think that like all the 12 personnel stuff that Peterson did with Ertz and Goddard in his last year in Philadelphia was really interesting. But at its heart,
that seems so personnel dependent, though.
Exactly. Let's say at its heart, what he really is an RPO based West Coast offensive guy.
Which I don't.
I don't know. I don't know if that's the best use for Justin Fields. Not that he couldn't operate in it, but again, you start talking about best usage for players like this. I'd rather have something that's a little bit more downhill in the run game and vertical in the passing game. And that's why I think, Leftwich, like I said.
Kellen Moore works.
Kellen Moore, that would be another really good one. Harbaugh, like we mentioned, would be a really good fit for that as well. And there's only a handful of guys that really kind of have that type of offensive approach. So, if he's able to link up with one of those guys, I think you're looking at an opportunity for him to really, really grow.
I wonder what Daboll, if I'm Brian Daboll, I'm not leaving Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. But I do wonder because he's changed so much over the years that I wonder if he would ever just be like, go back to, if he had a different quarterback, wherever he goes, I wonder if it's like, man, does he go out of the four open, like 10 personnel, 11 personnel spread stuff with whatever quarterback he ends up getting, if he becomes a head coach, or even, I don't know if he'd ever leave for another OC job, I doubt it. But like, I wonder about him sometimes, because I think that offense they built that offense so perfectly for Josh Allen that I don't know how much you have to have a great quarterback. Like, you can't just go in with like a random quarterback and like run that offense. It doesn't work. So I'm curious about what Daboll would a Daboll offense without Josh Allen would look like if he would go back to some of the stuff he was doing at Alabama and then the first couple of years with the Bills before they realized what they had in Josh Allen. All right, before we get out of here, Broncos. So we talked about Fangio. Fangio is out, and they're going to keep the GM Patton. I think the Broncos are just going to be in this cycle forever. Like, I'm sorry. Yep. You're going to keep firing. First of all, maybe at the end of the day, you should never have hired these defensive coaches, Vance Joseph and Fangio, if this is what you were going to do with them. Like, then just go get the offensive guy and, like, blame it all on him and whatever. Exactly. But, like, they're going to keep firing really good coaches as they find a quarterback. And if they don't find a quarterback, it's just going to be like this forever. And, like, man, you are in the toughest division in football right now with probably two elite quarterbacks. And honestly, Derek Carr, fuck it. He's 3 elite quarterbacks in that division. Like, you got to find the guy, and you're just going to keep going down this cycle. So first thing is they are not hiring a defensive coach. I can guarantee you that. That's not happening.
Bet the house on that. You can, bet the mortgage on that one.
They, in a sense, they're screwed because I don't know what I'm going to look it up right now, but what's the order for them? Where are they picking? Like, there's no quarterbacks this year that I love. That's for sure. And then where are they picking? Let me see. I keep scrolling down. I don't see a Broncos logo, so I don't even know where they're picking. This is bad. This is bad podcasting right here, but I'm gonna find it. So like, I don't know, man. They just what do you do with this team unless you find a quarterback? Because it's such a good roster. It's honestly such. Oh, they're picking 9th. Okay, that's actually
they're picking 9th.
So here comes Kenny Pickett and Matt Corral. So there you go.
Yuck.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. To your point, I mean, they are stuck in this cycle forever. I mean, they stuck with they continue to try this Drew Lock thing for much longer than they should have, for starters. And then, now Vic Fangio is ultimately, I think, catching strays from the fact that they made such a commitment to Drew Lock in the first place. Finding out what the ceiling of this offense is with him as your quarterback, I think, is what ultimately is costing him the job. Teddy Bridgewater obviously is a nice stopgap to have, but you're still going to be bumping into similar issues, even if you're not getting the ridiculous turnover issues and just missing wide open guys all the time that Drew Lock does. Teddy's also not pushing your offense down the field in a way that you needed. So you're always going to be bumping your head up against your offensive ceiling. And it puts you in a position, right, where your defense basically has to be perfect. And if the defense is not perfect, now all of a sudden you look like a guy who isn't doing your job on either side of the ball, which I think we all know in terms of the quality of coach that Fangio is not the case. So it's 100% going to be an offensive guy. I don't know from a philosophical perspective what it is that they're actually after. One of the names, not for a head coach, but in terms of like offensive play caller that I'm really interested in knowing about is like, what is the future like for Joe Brady? Because if I look at that receiving core, if I'm a new head coach in Denver, I might want Joe Brady, running this heavy 11 personnel, or at least an offense that's probably built to operate the majority of the time out of 11 personnel or overwhelmingly out of 11 personnel. Like that might be a guy I think that kind of fits what they need from an offensive perspective. And they have running backs that operate well running the ball out of 11 personnel as well in terms of their skill set.
I think, all right, you bring Joe Brady's a good one. You bring Dable in and you say, Lock, look, I don't think he's very good, but if he's going to be good, it might be in a Josh Allen type of situation.
Yes, I was going to say, in your offense might be the one thing that...
Like, maybe that's the one. Like, maybe, they just spread it out and stay in, like you said, 11 personnel, maybe some 10 personnel, and just hope that he figures it out and you can get this huge, this crazy playmaker that Drew Lock kind of is, and you just distill that. Like, and that's the only thing. We're not going to run the ball. We're not going to do anything. We're going to throw the ball every play. Maybe that's, to me, the only way. Because you can't put him in a pat. I think Locke is the bigger issue, but at the same time, you can't really put him in a Pat Shurmur offense. Like, I'm sorry.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, so, okay, I get it. They're like that. The combination there was never going to work. I will say that there's probably a reason why he didn't start the season.
Yes.
I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is the answer there either, obviously. That's right. For sure. Teddy is, at this point, I love Teddy, career backup. Hopefully he plays another 40 years in the league. I don't care. But with Locke, it's like, if you're going to stay with Locke, and honestly, for this season,
the right move.
Ninth,
the right move is to stay with. I was going to say.
Don't overcorrect and take a quarterback at 9.
My thing was going to be like, please don't do what I know everybody in that building wants to do, and that's package 9 and another first-round pick to try to get to like 4 and really overdraft for a quarterback. Like, please, for the love of God, just ride this one out. Okay, I know everybody's going to want the quarterback thing to be solved right this second.
I know.
Ride this out. It's fine. The Chargers are better than you anyways right now. The Raiders are at least even, if not better than you. More times than not. Obviously, the Chiefs are the Chiefs. Eat it. Just eat it for eat it for this year and next.
Nobody wants to eat it. That's the problem about pro sports or any sport in general.
Yeah,
it's easy to eat it on a simulation when you're playing Madden. You can sim it, and then the next season comes in 3 minutes. Like, that's easy to do.
Yeah, when I'm the one who doesn't have to be in the building dealing with everybody moping around, 100%. Yeah, it's a great option.
And like, we're gonna get into the quarterback class at some point soon here, but like down in like a month or something. But like one of these quarterbacks is going to pan out, and you might pick that guy, right? Even if I believe, like, if you pick any of these quarterbacks in the first round, you're overdrafting them. I believe they're all second round quarterbacks with big flaws, some good. Strengths, but a lot of flaws. So maybe you pick a guy and it works out. Maybe can you pick it works out? You pick him, he works out. Like, whatever. I don't know. I wouldn't go down that road because
if those guys are available. Honestly, if those guys are available at like pick 28, pick 29, and you got something to play with and you want to move up for that, I don't hate it because then you get the 5th-year option. Fine. Like, if you want a quarterback that you get all 5 years on their rookie deal, like I'm good with that. I won't protest it. Just not with 9.
Yeah,
Nine is not going to solve your problems.
No, and I think the problem with that is just like, if you hit on the quarterback and it's a second round guy or later, and you only get the 4 years, who fucking cares? Because you hit on the quarterback, in the big picture, I'm gonna pay him anyways. Like, it's okay. Like, we're good. Like, it's not like if you're the Broncos, you care so much about hitting on the quarterback that whatever that extra year because of the first round or second round stuff, it's like whatever. But yeah, I just they're gonna take a quarterback. I know they are.
Yep.
But I'd rather them take a quarterback in the second round. They're going to take a quarterback in the first round. I'd rather them just take a quarterback in the second round, just because I don't love any of these guys in the top 10. And they will, and 2 of them will go. Like, I keep seeing Corral and Pickett in the top 10. So
I mean, hey, that's the quarterback market. If you're a second round talent, that means you're a first round pick. If you're a first round talent, you're a top 10 pick. If you play quarterback, that's the way that this goes.
It'll be so funny to me if they take Corral. Given.
Oh, they're just going to be. You're drafting the same quarterback. I hope they know that.
Like,
if you did, you're drafting the exact same guy.
You went and you took Drew Lock based on one season where his offensive coordinator was Josh Heupel.
Right. A Baylor
and
guy.
Then there's the connection here because, like,
you have Levy.
Heupel goes to Central Florida, and brings in his buddy Jeff Lebby, who he knew before, to help him with the offense. And then Jeff Lebby goes to Ole Miss, and he coaches Matt Corral, running this very similar, extremely similar offense.
I mean, it's basically as close to the same as it gets, honestly.
Yeah. So, like, that would be... Honestly, now I'm rooting for that. Like, that to me is the funniest thing. Now, it's going to waste guys like Judy and Surtain and all these good players that they have, but Justin Simmons, but, like, that now I'm on board with that because that's the funniest thing to me. All right. I think we're done here.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Go Dogs. Or Roll Tide. I don't know. Who cares?
Yeah. All right. We will see you guys later this week. We'll talk about the playoff picture in the NFL.